Hello, everyone, and welcome to iCritic Live. This is the first podcast episode of the year where we talk about entertainment, pop culture, and life in between. I'm your host, Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here today. And since this is the first episode of the new year, of course, we are going to do what we're always going to do. We're going to reflect on the previous year, and we're going to focus on the highs and the lows. But in this episode, it's primarily going to be the lows because we are doing the top 10 worst films of the year. And of course, I had to have Rachel's reviews come over to discuss the worst films of the year because I get few pleasures in life than seeing her get annoyed by truly bad movies.
Yeah, there was a lot. There was a lot to go on this year.
Yeah, there was
list to make.
Yep, there was balance. In fact, here's the now, as kind of also a little semi-announcement, I've started to seriously update my iCritic website again. It was kind of not being updated, but this is now going to be a place with daily articles and shorts and editorials, with the exception of weekends and holidays. So I actually have written up for the first time in a long time the top 10 worst films of 2024. So I don't need as many tabs this time around because it can all be there. Now, you'll notice the first thing here is a list of films, and that's because, well, what we always do, we always have to have some dishonorable mentions as well. So, as always, I will go first, then you will go. Now, for my dishonorable mentions, I have Back to Black, which is definitely a biopic, which is how you don't make them, with an uninteresting romance and no story behind the music or what it means to anyone. Basically, it's the opposite of a complete unknown, and it's kind of sad because not only was the director of this a talented director, but she had an Oscar-winning documentary she could have pulled some inspiration from. If was a dishonorable mention, but it ultimately wasn't awful. It was just bad. Longlegs is, I'm in the minority. I did not like Longlegs very much, but I didn't dislike it enough to put it on the top 10 list. Moana 2 and Mufasa the Lion King, honestly, they're just kind of average. I have to mention that they're not worth seeing, but did they truly deserve to be the worst? Probably not. Peter 5'8", which was Kevin Spacey's big return at like one of those direct-to-video adult movies, and it's
I've heard of that.
Yeah. It's like the first movie that Kevin Spacey's been in a while, and it was like low budget. And I mean, of course, the funny thing is he's great in it, but it those like Bruce Willis direct-to-video sequels and things like that, where it's like it's like, yeah, these are being made as cheaply as possible. It's one of those, and honestly, it probably should be on the list, but it's of such inconsequence that it's like, why pick on it anymore? Now, the one that bugged me the most was The Substance. I think it does deserve a dishonorable mention, but I couldn't in good conscience put it on the list because my issues with it was the last 15 minutes. Until then, the movie was great. Like, brilliant even in many ways, but I have never seen a movie torpedo itself so badly in the final act. But is a 15-minute ending bad enough to put on the top 10 worst list when the other 95 minutes are great? I struggled with that one, so it's like, well, I'm going to spare it, but I'm going to have it be a dishonorable mention on that one. So, but with that said, and now that those are the dishonorable mentions, I will share my number 10 pick, and then, of course, you'll share yours. My number 10 pick of the year is Venom: The Last Dance. And just a spoiler, folks, Sony Spider-Verse movies are definitely going to come up more than once in this list. Now, this one's probably the least offensive of the three, and maybe in another year, if they just made one or two little changes, maybe it wouldn't have made the list. But this is like a weird way to end a trilogy, all the way down to even not including most of the characters from the first two movies. Like, it was a sequel to it the end of a trilogy that did not follow through on even the last two films. And like the last two films was boring and not interesting, and it still feels so 90s. Like it feels like Steel and Batman and Robin bad in a sense where it's like it's just the 90s had a certain way of being bad about superhero movies that this film kind of recaptures, and so it's like I'm done with Venom.
I actually liked the first two. I thought that they were like pretty funny buddy movies. And they kind of knew what they were about. They were short, they were sweet. They, and
I'm glad they're short, that's for sure.
I enjoyed the buddy comedy aspect of the first two. The second one is probably my favorite of the trilogy.
The second one's the least bad, that's for sure.
Yeah, but this one, the problem is that it forgot to be a buddy comedy movie. It forgot the whole thing that, at least for me, made the series appealing. It was boring and self-serious and tried to like have all this sentiment of like, oh, don't you love all this franchise, and trying to be like have all these epic moments and whatever. And Juno Temple, her character was really bad, and there must be something that Children of Edgefor just like cannot be in a good comic book movie. And yeah,
wasn't he in Doctor Strange?
I don't know, but I
think he was, and
he was really bad in
that.
This
wasn't too bad, but yeah, he wasn't good in this. Actually,
it just took itself too seriously. It's like you lost the whole appeal of this franchise. Was Eddie and Venom and being silly, and there were like a couple moments that were funny, but like it just, they really missed the mark, in my opinion, on what the whole appeal, I think, for a lot of people is on these movies.
Yeah, so I didn't find a lot of appeal in the first two movies, but now that you mentioned the buddy cop thing, it's like, oh yeah, that might be one of the reasons why it was even just a little bit more bland than it usually is. So yeah, like that was not great for me. So
yeah, it was
what are your dishonorable
blockbuster this year?
Yeah, the blockbusters the blockbusters are going to get hard in this list. From us, because it was a bad studio year.
Well, my honorable mentions, I have Wolves. What a disappointment! What a mediocre movie this was. Exposition heavy, just super lame. I was like, okay, now I understand why I didn't get a theatrical, because it was so lame.
So I actually liked Wolves for the same reason you liked the first Venoms, and I did see it in theaters. So just throwing that out there.
Oh, it was so disappointing, I thought. And then I have Red One, which would just look like trash. It wasn't fun. It was long. It was drawn out. What a disappointment. I was hoping to. I like Christmas movies, I should have loved it. Nope. And then It Ends With Us. I hated the book, so I was definitely not the target audience for this. But I really hated the way that they were like, see all those rom-com scenes that you thought were fun. Oh no, they really weren't. They were really toxic and they were really bad. You're such a fool for believing in those rom-com scenes, and that just really, really annoyed me. And so yeah, I really dislike, and the whole message of like that in order to be a empowered woman, you have to be alone, and like basically all men are scum. And that was definitely the message of the book, and in my opinion, the message of the movie. It ends with us. We're getting out of this toxic, whatever. I hated that. And then the other one that's definitely a very unpopular opinion in Utah. For some reason, Utah Film Critics Association and my fellow critics love Tuesday, with Louise Dreyfus and the Death Bird. And I was so annoyed by this movie. I thought it was so pretentious, and it was so heavy-handed. And like, I felt like none of the insight was particularly interesting, or like, yeah, death is hard. Wow, that is so brilliant. And so it just annoyed me. And it's been very popular in Utah. So
I've not that one. I have not heard about.
It got nominated for our best picture and best screenplay here in Utah. So
oh wow. So well, well, shoot, if you don't like Red One, like I don't know if we should do the best films of the year list together.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
kidding.
really.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. By the way.
Okay, I
Wait,
thought it looked horrible.
I actually opened my review saying Red One was the strangest Christmas movie I had ever seen, and I had just seen a Christmas movie where Jack Black plays Satan.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about that coming up.
Yeah, so what's number 10 on your list?
My number 10 is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. This was such a lame, boring, tedious movie. And it was like they just kind of ran out of ideas. They're like, everybody gets to be a Ghostbuster. Everybody has a proton pack by the end of it. It was just ridiculous. And I don't know. It was just they forgot to tell like a compelling story with like certainly with no laughs. It was just so lame.
Yeah.
That,
well, I think one of the issues is probably that I don't really think Ghostbusters is supposed to be a franchise. I think it was one of those movies where it's like it was a great idea. You captured lightning in a bottle. It had the perfect cast the first time, but how do you keep going with that? It's essentially one joke at the end of the day.
I mean, if somebody were going to say to me, okay, come up with a Ghostbusters script, I would probably have them like solving cases and like, just make it more of a procedural in that regard. And that could be fun. Like the idea of them actually kind of working as Ghostbusters is something they've never really done before. And so it's like, this could have been fun, but it just was such a slog.
Yeah, it was a huge slog. I mean, and I actually did kind of like the previous one as like a little bit of a tribute to the series as a whole. It helped that Jason Reitman was directing it. And I saw someone suggest maybe Reitman should be back in the director's chair. And it's like, well, look, while I do not doubt that another Reitman produced Ghostbusters would probably be better than this, he's so talented. Why would you want him to be making Ghostbusters movies?
Yeah, that's true.
His life. I mean, I would much rather see him making Saturday Night and Thank You for Smoking and Juno.
I agree.
Personally. So, yeah, I mean, I think Ghostbusters, it didn't even get a dishonorable mention because it was just so average. It was like, I'm kind of over the Ghostbusters right now. I mean, I actually didn't dislike the female Ghostbusters. And I like the last one, but it's like at the end of the day, like I could have lived without seeing any of these other than the first one.
Yeah, great.
And of course, I throw Ghostbusters 2 in there, but that one didn't make my list. But a studio film that did make my list was Harold and the Purple Crayon, and poor Zachary Levy. I do think the man is talented. I think he's got good comedic timing and he's very likable on screen. And I think he should fire his agent or something because he's in like some of like the worst uses of his talent. And I mean, aside from the fact that he is a big problem in this movie because it's like we really can't take this adult man basically acting like a kid so seriously, but the studio should have never made this live action. They should have never aged the character up. Like, it's frustrating at the beginning of the movie where they have that animated sequence that looks very much like the books, and it's like, yeah, that's the movie we want to see. That's what we want to see. That we don't want to see this basically slapstick comedy. The book wasn't even funny, so it's like this is one of those movies where I would like to be in the boardroom and find out, okay, how did you pitch this whimsical fantasy children's book to be this slapstick pratfall movie where the kid is aged up to an adult? I would like to know how that was sold, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I have it at 7. It's terrible. And like, it's so crazy to me that we had like several movies this year about supposedly like diving into imagination, real people confronted with imaginary world, imaginary friends, whatever it might be. and they were all so devoid of imagination. Like this Harold and the Purple Crown, like they just kind of amble around the city and occasionally draw something purple. Like, and it's just so boring. There's just no imagination. Like, it's just amazing. I mean, if at least had like a sweet spirit about it, but like it was also just kind of them, like there was no like imaginative story. It was so like people just kind of standing around, moving to different offices and completing tasks. Like it was so unimaginative. And this was even worse. It was terrible.
Yeah, and most of these movies even have to like have reality pop in and point out exactly why you can't just have imagination your whole life. And it's like none of these movies, including the good one in my opinion, The Imaginary, really knew how to confront that reality. Like, well, yeah, there's a reason adults tend to leave imagination behind at some point, but how do you do that and make it an uplifting story at that point?
Yeah.
So
I still felt like that one felt pretty derivative, but it was certainly better than any of these, that's for sure.
Yeah, at least it was, visually very imaginative.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I guess we'll be bringing that up again briefly, but what was number 9 on your list?
My number 9 is Back to Black.
Oh, good. I get to talk about this piece of garbage. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, I learned so little about Amy Winehouse as a musician. I guess I learned something about this marriage, this relationship that she had, I guess, but that's not really what I'm tuning into this movie for. I want to find out about her as a, like, that's why we know her. We know her because she was a singer, and you just got almost no insight into like why she wrote particular songs. Even a song like Rehab, we don't really like see her write it. We don't see, we don't know. And it just was such a bizarre, it was such a bizarre choice for for this movie.
Yeah. So, I wouldn't personally oppose to this movie being about the relationship if the relationship was interesting and, if they found a way to make us care about it. But I didn't care about the relationship. And yeah, you're right about the music. I mean, look, there have been good biopics where the music is actually not the focus of the character, so it can be done. But when you're going to feature that much music, you probably should put some context with it. That's one of the reasons why I dislike Bohemian Rhapsody as much as I did, because it's like, yeah, they're playing the songs, but it doesn't really add any emotional weight because you don't know what they mean to the band or the characters. Like, it just doesn't. It's just like,
well, yeah, and the conflict was so phony in that movie. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and this movie does the same thing. It's like it's playing the songs to kind of get like an emotional reaction out of you because you recognize the songs, but it doesn't mean anything in the context of the movie. So why do I care?
Right.
And the funny thing is, it's like it kind of seems like it's like, okay, they got a great actress to be Amy Winehouse. The look of the film was good. Like it seemed like the pieces were there and they just focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely disappointing. Okay, so my number 8. So I'm going to say something. My number 8 movie of the year is definitely going to stand out because it's actually on track to have a record number of Oscar nominations, and people have been talking about how brave and important this movie is. And honestly, because of that, I kind of wish I could put it a little lower on the list, but I can't because there are objectively worse films. But guys, Emilia Perez is not bold. It's not groundbreaking. It's not important. This is stupid.
I am just baffled by this movie.
This is I don't want to get too political here, but I am going to say something that is probably unpopular. I believe if this movie did not involve a transgender protagonist, I don't think it would be getting the praise that it does. Like, this is the typical industry favorite award movie where Hollywood.
I don't even think that's a particularly political statement. I think it's just a true fact that I think
Yeah,
it's
because
just true.
this is the kind of movie that Hollywood likes to make. It's like, see, we're groundbreaking. We're bringing stories that no one else will tell. Like, these are the kind of people you would not meet in real life, and we're putting a human face on them, and that's why we're bold and daring. And it's like, well, ignoring the transgender aspect, I would hope a lot of people don't know a drug dealer in their lives. So yes, you're right about that. But this whole thing where it's like the drug dealer, and I will stay up front, it's not like this is an unworkable story. The concept, anything can be workable at the end of the day. And like when the movie started, it's like, oh, this drug dealer wants to become a woman. It's like okay, let's see where they go with this. But it just gets so stupid. It's like, I mean, they make it a musical for some reason, and none of the songs are good in my opinion. Like, I think it's gonna look it looks even worse when you consider that Wicked came out this year. And the songs in Amelia Perez, by the way, are so bad they make the Moana 2 songs seem like they were Lin-Manuel Miranda songs. I don't like these characters. It's extremely strange that it's being directed by a French guy who speaks neither English or Spanish, and they hired a Spanish actress with Selena Gomez, and Spanish is not her first language. And I think some Spanish critics have rightfully pointed out that she doesn't speak the language very well. And the director has even gone on record saying like that he did not immerse himself in Mexican culture. And it's like, well, it shows, because not that I want to get into the whole stereotype thing, but I mean, it does seem like Mexico, they show all the worst sides of Mexico, when honestly, a person like Amelia Perez should have the money to live in a better part of town. And then she uses her money to just like find the bodies of basically the people she helped murder when and it's like this doesn't even seem like this was the first draft of a screenplay. This seems like this was a concept of a first draft. And because Netflix has more money than they know to do with sometimes, they're like, make it into a movie. make it into a movie. Guys, this is stupid.
It felt like to me that somebody told this guy that, oh, you can never make another movie again. So he's like, oh, I got to put every idea that I've ever had into one movie. Like, it was such a mess. There was just no cohesion. There was no like emotional connection. It was just like pure randomness. And yeah, I mean, it was, I just baffled, because the thing that's so strange this year is that there's usually one or two movies that end up getting awards consideration nominations that are completely forgettable and bland Oscar baiting movies. Those happen every year. Right. It's just so weird that it seems like Amelia Perez is this year's one that like nobody's excited about. Hardly, even people I know that like enjoyed it are still like, yeah, it was pretty good. It was fine. I know nobody that like loves this movie.
I don't know a single person who, after the Golden Globe, said, yes, Amelia Perez got 10 Golden Globe nominations. And usually when like a forgettable Oscar baiting movie like this comes along, they get one to three nominations, like a complete unknown. Like, that's going to get like probably 4 nominations at most, because it's like, you can single out a couple of the performances and maybe it for picture and sound, but it's not going to get a lot. But this thing keeps breaking.
It's just so odd. Like, this is such a strange movie to be the bland Oscar pick this year. Like, what?
Yep. And like, so, I mean, I'm sorry that we're going to be spending a lot of time on this particular movie, because
it's just so odd.
First, because it's not on your list, and I just have so much I want to say.
Well, it's just like it's the movie that seemingly almost nobody loves, and yet it's one of the awards favorites. Like, it's so weird.
Yep, I am convinced that the only reason it's getting all this love is because it's like, oh, it's starring. Not only is it about a transgendered person, it's starring a transgendered person. This is the kind of representation. This is a representation that people who care deeply about this. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but they care deeply about this. This is the kind of they want to see representation. They get frustrated that Disney pushes things out of their movies because of it. And it's like, and I actually feel sorry because it's like, yeah, it's sad that you are so desperate for representation because you're not getting it, that this has become the movie that you cling on to.
Well, it's bizarre too, because if you wanted trans representation in a movie this year, there have been really good films like National Anthem.
Will and Harper, like that
Will and
documentary, like,
Harper.
that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. There's a little movie called National Anthem with Charlie Plummer that's actually quite lovely and well acted. And I mean, I'm sure there's others. That Joker, the People's Joker. I haven't seen it, but I heard really good things. I mean, there have been other movies this year that people could be championing and that have trans characters, trans actors, and I don't know. So it's very strange.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
Yeah. So I won't talk about the awards because when we do our Oscar video, I'm sure we'll talk about the rampant category fraud that this movie, like the category fraud seems especially egregious this year. But I'm going to mention something, and you know what I'm talking about, but let's talk about Selena Gomez for a second in this movie. Who, by the way, I love Selena Gomez. I am an unabashed Selena Gomez fan. And I don't speak Spanish, so this wasn't an issue for me. But there was some, I think it was Good Morning America, something like that, where the hosts who did speak Spanish were mentioning that Selena Gomez did not speak Spanish very well because it's not her first language. And as a result, her accent was awkward. The sentences didn't flow the way
it was
they should.
Eugenio Derbez. He said that he didn't think it was a very good accent, and then which was like a completely valid point. And then he apologized for it. I'm like, don't apologize.
Well, the point I was getting at is that she responded to that by saying, "I did the best with what I was given. I'm sorry if you didn't like it." Which, by the way, that's not a response to her Spanish not being very, very good. That's like a completely different. She's responding to something he wasn't even complaining about, which would have been like the script or something. And then he apologized. And that's when I was like, ridiculous. I think people are afraid to admit this is not a very good movie. I think there's just something about this. I think it's because of the people involved, what it's about, where someone is saying, and by the way, this is where, people rightfully call out media people for being activists. It's like, this subject matter is too important to admit it's not very good, and we didn't like it.
Yeah, I agree.
And so Amelia because of the awards, I wish I could put this higher on the list, but objectively speaking, there are considerably worse films.
It is definitely I would think it's definitely the most overrated film of the year for sure.
Yeah, well, you know how I feel about saying overrated, but I'm glad to have someone who could actually okay, cover your ears, Mom. But when I saw that it got 10 Golden Globe nominations, I said, "Oh, that's bullshit."
Yes.
So, and even for the Golden Globes. All right, number 8 for you.
It's Madam Web. I have at 8. Like I said, this order, all these movies are bad, so whatever. But this was terrible, absolutely horrible. And the product placement was embarrassing. The acting was terrible. The just technically, it was so poorly made. The ADR, the visual effects, everything was just so bad. And you just think how could this get made? It's just really bad. And when the villain gets taken out by a Pepsi Cola sign, and the thing is just like, what?
Oh my gosh! I'll have
you like to think that people are trying their hardest even in bad movies, but I don't know. It was hard to make that argument with Madam Web. There was just so many aspects that were so lazy.
Yeah, this I'll have more to say about Madam Web a little later, and I'll leave it at that. Other than to say I don't disagree with anything you said. Now then, I know your big slight against Apple this year was Wolves, which I personally liked. And by the way, whether you liked it or not, I actually give director John Watts a lot of credit for basically giving the money back for the sequel and publicly telling people, hey, they promised that this was going to be a theatrical film. It wasn't, and I don't trust him as a creative partner anymore. Like, I give him a lot of credit for that. But I think even you will admit that if it wasn't the greatest, it was more worthy of a theatrical release than Argyle was. Oh boy.
Yeah,
poor
I don't know.
Oh,
I mean,
Argyle. Oh my gosh.
Argyle was bad. I actually was kind of digging it for about the first 30 minutes or so. And then it just like, okay, now we've had 15 twists and just.
I think a lot of us were digging it for the first 30 minutes or so, but this was a movie that I think I wrote, it wants to be more clever than it actually is.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Like Matthew Vaughn decided, I want to subvert expectations and put a twist on top of a twist. And one of the most interesting things is like one of the big questions that they advertised was, who is Argyle? And even when people know who Argyle is, no one wants to actually spoil it. I think it's because the answer is so dumb, you feel stupid by saying it. Like, you just feel dumb. This movie just makes you feel dumber and dumber, and it's just like, I just don't know. And the sad thing about this movie, the real sad thing is, like, we all say that studios learn the wrong lessons from failure sometimes, and Apple really learned the wrong lesson from this. They released this, it bombed, rightfully so, and their lesson was, well, I guess we just shouldn't put movies in theaters because maybe they're not going to make money. It's like, no, that's not the lesson you learn. Your movies aren't going to make money on Apple TV Plus either. The lesson is, don't put bad movies in theaters.
Yeah, it's a good example of, like, sometimes we need checks on our directors, like giving them full creative freedom. I mean, what the heck with they thinking on it? Yeah, it was at best forgettable.
Well, I think it was memorably bad.
Yeah.
And if F1 is good, which I am hearing good things about F1, I hope that makes money just to show Apple, like, you see, you can make money in theaters if the movies are good.
Yeah.
Just don't release garbage and everything will be fine.
You don't need to give your directors, not every movie needs to be $200 million film. Like,
they're like, why did Red One cost $250 million?
Ridiculous.
Dollars. That looked like an $80 million.
Yeah, it looks like trash.
Yep.
Yeah.
Peter Jackson got an additional $50 million and made 3 Lord of the Ring movies for what Red One cost. Like, let that sink.
Insane. That's crazy.
All right, what's your number 7 pick?
My number 7 is Harold and the Purple Crayon. Just the most boring movie. No imagination. It was a chore.
By the way, here's something that's really sad. $32 million on a $40 million production budget. You couldn't even break even on a low budget like that.
Yeah, it was. It was so boring. It was. Whew.
Okay, let's erase. Let's take our magic marker and erase that that purple stain, and let's talk about another stain that that actually had worse colors than Harold and the Purple Crayon. It was Borderlands. And the thing is, there's a lot of things I could say about this one, but I'm going to mention one thing. I have never seen a movie, and I know you're probably going to make a crack about this considering what's higher on your list, but I have never seen a movie with such a big budget and talented cast that seemed like they were just making things up on the fly. Like,
it really felt like they came to set every day and were like, okay, well, we're all here. Let's film something. Like,
it just, was this like a bunch of like short films that they decided they had to somehow string together into a movie. I mean, the cast doesn't even look like they know what's going on. Like, it's hard to get Cate Blanchett in a movie and have it look like she is not in full control of the role. But boy, Borderlands sure figured out a way to make Cate Blanchett just kind of go like, I don't know what's going on here. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm doing this as a favor to my
It was
agent.
honestly, and I don't usually use this word, it was basically unwatchable. It wasn't like so bad it's good fun. It was just, there was just nothing. It was like, what?
So I'm going to admit to something with this movie, because I saw a 10:15 IMAX showing, and I was the only person there. And I was so confused and bored by this movie. I don't know why I didn't leave, but I actually got on my phone and like started playing Pokemon Go.
Yeah, I don't
Because
blame
I was
you.
just so uninterested in what was going on in.
Yeah.
I don't even want to call it a movie. Like, it's something else. So what's your number 6 pick?
My number 6 maybe is my controversial one, but artsy films can be trash. They can be terrible. And for me, Kinds of Kindness was one of the most unbearable, horrible experiences that I had at the movies this year. I absolutely hated all 3 stories. I didn't find them compelling or interesting. I mean, I guess there's some acting there, but I mean, I'm not the biggest Lanthimos fan in general, but like it seems like at a certain point that he could just. I was joking that he could have Emma Stone with like a stick, just waving a stick, and people would be like, "You're brilliant!" Like, just like nobody cares. Do you have like a story? Do you have like characters that are compelling? Why do you have cannibalism in every single one of these stories? Like, it was just. I
There was
just
cannibalism
could
in every
not
single story.
stand it. And it's, I don't know. I just found it like just so annoying on every level.
Well, I'm gonna let you sit with that and think about what you just did there. In the meantime, I'm gonna get back with my number 5 pick, Madam Web, because you're right. This is
right.
Like Borderlands. This is definitely almost unwatchable. Like,
Yeah, it's
really
terrible.
dumb. And the thing is, like, Madam Web was never a character that I thought would make for her own movie. She's like an elderly woman, and she's really like a guiding point for Spider-Man. So when I heard like, oh, they're gonna give her own movie, it's like, well, that's gonna be at least interesting. But no, it wasn't even interesting. It was. Everyone looked bored in this movie. Like, I mean, I know that there's this thing where like actors typically will take the paycheck movie so they can get other movies that they want to get made. And I think that was the case with Dakota Johnson. But I mean, most of the time they'll at least try. This time it's like she was like, I'm not even going to try to pretend that this is worthwhile. I'm just
it was bad.
So yeah, I'm holding on to my Sony CEO comments for a little later, but because of how this has been structured, I kind of have to hold some of my final thoughts till later on. So, okay, what's your number 4?
You mean my number 5?
Oh, your number 5. Sorry.
So my number 5, I usually don't pick on small fry in this, but I don't know. It's a faith-based film that I saw this year, and I love the director. I actually have interviewed him. Garrett Batty, he's great. But The Carpenter was just such a bizarre. I just had to include it on my list. It was so bizarre. It was this combination of like mixed martial arts and Jesus. This guy, he is like an apprentice, a carpenter apprentice for Jesus. At the same time, he is training, or he is a fighter in the mixed martial arts tournament in not Jerusalem, but wherever, I forget. Anyway,
wow, I remember reading stories about that in the Gospel of Luke.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and obviously, like at the time, like Romans had like, you know, those kinds of things. I get that, but like it was all just so bizarrely handled. There was so much boxing and fighting in this, and you had like there was absolutely no concern about historical accuracy at all. Not that you necessarily expect it, but there's this character that I think it's Maria or Mary. It's not like the Mary from the scriptures, but there's a Mary character or Maria, and she is like in the crowds cheering on her guy, and it's like trying to make like
I, I,
you know, a Rocky Adrian moment. It's just
I'm tempted to watch this movie with the pastor of my church just to see what his reaction is. I haven't seen this movie, but I will say I was not able to find a Wikipedia page for it. So you know your movie's in trouble when the free encyclopedia doesn't give you much to work with. This sounds bad though. This sounds really was bad. This sounds pretty bad, but having not seen it, I can't comment on it other than to say I doubt it's as bad as my number 4 pick, which is Kinds of Kindness. Yes, I do not disagree with you. I mean, I love Yorgos Lanthimos, but and unlike you, I will say every one of these stories starts out interesting, but then that's the problem. They start interesting, but they never go anywhere.
Yeah.
None of them.
I can accept that.
I mean, you know, here's the thing. I was reading that Yorgos Lanthimos is actually kind of getting annoyed because he likes being avant-garde and outside the box. So he's kind of bothered by the fact that his movies seem to be getting critical acclaim and mainstream success. He's kind of one of those people, kind of like Bob Dylan in a way, who would probably be happier if his stuff was getting out there, but it wasn't popular or being embraced. So I think he made this movie purposefully to tick everyone off. And I can almost see it there because it's like he made choices that it's like I know a director who's as good as him would not make. He purposefully cut all of these stories off at the knee points to make sure that none of them could stand. It's like that dance with Emma Stone at the very end, and it's like, I'm sorry, that is bad for all the wrong reasons, not even in a cheeky way. This, I mean, look, the thing is, if he wanted to play a prank on the studios where they basically gave him money to do whatever he wanted after like he had made a couple big successes, and he's like, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to give him something that's not workable. Then kudos to him for doing that.
That's why it's so frustrating that it just seems like that people just have like certain directors that they have a crush on, and no matter what, he could put out anything and they would still claim it's art, and they would still, you know, you're just like, is there ever going to be a limit of like,
well, look, it's still art, but not all art is good.
It's just like there's just certain people that I feel like people have these massive blinders on, and when you actually start to talk to them about the movie, they're like, I'm like, then why did you recommend it? Why did you say it was good? Like, what? Like, I don't know. I get really frustrated about that when people play favorites and don't even like try to be objective. Like, I get it. None of us are objective as critics, but like, it should at least like try, and you shouldn't have like your pet directors that like no matter what they release, you're gonna recommend it. Like, I don't know. It bothers me.
Well, I have my personal favorite directors. Lanthimos is one of them, not gonna lie. But the thing is, at first and foremost, I have to like see what they're trying to do and stuff. And the thing is, I think I do get this movie. I think I do get what Lanthimos is trying to do, but I don't like it. And it is very condescending. Now, I thankfully I could watch it in 3 different hour-long me and my wife watched it in 3 separate sections because it's basically 3 short films is what it is. I didn't see this in theaters. And my wife loved The Favorite. She loved Poor Things, but yeah, she watched this and she actually asked, did the movie just end? It seems like there should be another 30 minutes every single time. And it's like, you're right, because he's purposefully jerking the audience around. That's what he's doing. And I think I actually think he's probably getting a kick seeing how many people he can get to give this a good review.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're probably right.
Even though he knows, and again, on that level, it's kind of wickedly brilliant if you stop and think about that. He could get it funded, and like, look, it's like, it's a very Andy Kaufman type of thing to do, but at the same time, when life is so short, and I have always been very aware of how short life can be ever since my sister-in-law passed away on her honeymoon, no less. That it's like, you know what, life's too short to have to put up with nonsense like this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have no problem with people genuinely liking things that I don't like. That happens all the time. But like, when it just seems like, they actually don't like, when you actually start talking to them about it, it's like, then why did you recommend it? I don't know. That's what gets me, is when I feel like they just have these favorites and they can't objectively look at what their favorites have made. That's not good.
Yeah. Now,
in my opinion.
Now, be honest. How much of your day did I make by putting that movie on?
Yeah, no, really. The stream has improved.
It's like, that was the one that you were expecting pushback on.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. All right, so number 4 with you. Which one?
Yeah, number 4, I have Dear Santa. You know, of course, I'm the queen of Christmas. I love Christmas movies. And this thing, I just think the whole concept was so misguided. Like, it'd be one thing to have if it was an adult who sells their soul to Satan, writes the letter to Satan, and then ends up. But the fact that they have a little child writing this letter to Satan accidentally because he's dyslexic, and then he literally sells his soul to Satan to keep his parents from getting divorced. I just found that so gross, and it just was not nearly funny enough to overcome such a off-putting premise for me, and so I just didn't like it.
So I've been very conflicted about this one, because that scene where Jack Black shows up in the kid's room and there's clearly been some miscommunication. I think that's a very funny scene. But that being said, the premise is icky. And, the issue for me isn't even that it's a child per se. The issue is that it's a family film, or at least it's being sold as a family film, where it's like, there is something that seems wrong about making a supposed family Christmas film where Satan is the good guy.
Yeah, like there was a movie,
and this is the Farrelly brothers. Like, if they wanted to make it like an R-rated movie and really go all out with the concept, maybe I would have accepted a little bit more. But the fact that it's supposed to be heartwarming.
There was a movie a couple of years ago called Letters to Satan Claus, and it was a campy horror movie about a woman who she's bitter about Christmas and everything else. She writes a letter to Satan Claus intentionally. And then all of this, like, very bloody. It's like a campy horror movie. It's fun. I enjoyed it for what it is and what it's trying to be. And it had like a little bit of a sense of humor. And I mean, that's fine. I enjoyed that, because it's not about a little kid not wanting his parents to get divorced, so he sells his soul to the devil. Like, what?
These are the kind of hopes and dreams that, even ignoring the Satan aspect, that kids get taken advantage of all the time.
Yeah.
In real life. So it's kind of hard to really get behind this. And, I have to wonder if maybe this was a more radical movie, because the end with the Ben Stiller cameo, and that was another funny scene, I have to admit, almost wants to backtrack on the premise, because they know this premise is not going to sit well.
Yeah,
with
I
lot
could
of
see that.
people. So I kind of wonder about that. I would have a hard time saying it's the absolute worst movie, one of the worst movies of the year, because I enjoy it to a certain extent, but at the same time, I do agree there is a ickiness factor that I never really got over with this movie, and it's and I'm not surprised it went straight to streaming, like, because it's like I don't think they knew how to sell this movie, because it's really too edgy to be a family movie, but at the same time the story is so conventional. It's not really an adult movie anyway.
Right.
So
Yeah,
like
no, it's true.
what were they what were they doing? Okay, so my next movie, you're probably not going to have a lot to say about this one because I'd be very surprised if you saw it. But my number 3 pick is Squash Sunset.
Oh yeah, no, I avoided this one like the plague.
Yeah, you made the right call. That was aside from one scene that was kind of bittersweet and beautiful in a way. Like, this is I do not need to spend 90 minutes of my life watching Bigfoots hump, pee, and poop. I don't need to do that. And that's basically all that happens in this movie. And kind of like how you feel about certain directors being given a pet pass. I mean, look, the cinematography is beautiful. The costumes are great. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very competently made movie, but I'm wondering how many critics watch that and like, oh, it's artistic and maybe there's something there. And I kind of feel like the South Park kids going like, no, it's,
this is your classic Sundance gone wrong movies.
Rough.
Like that, there were probably a lot of the critics that reviewed it were probably at a panel, at a screening at Sundance. The whole cast there, whatever, the director, and then the director telling, oh, all so brilliant or whatever, and so that you have to be so careful. And I've covered Sundance for 7 years. I know that scene so well. You have to be so careful to not allow that to influence your. A lot of times I'll leave before the panel because I don't want something that they say to influence my review or my opinion, unless it's something that I like totally love. Then I'll sit and it for the panel. But yeah, it's. I just, as soon as I heard about it, I was like, that sounds absolutely horrible. I
don't know if those panels do Q&As from the audiences. I would probably have the balls, which is a appropriate term to use considering what this movie is like, to actually ask them like, so do you guys just have more money than you know what to do with?
Yeah.
Like, this is what you decided to do with your money. Like, you actually, like, Jesse Eisenberg decided he wanted to dress up as an ape and then pee on a concrete road.
What a Sundance he had. Real Pain and then this.
No, Real Pain was so much better.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
This is one of those situations where it's like, if Sasquatch Sunset was like the big blockbuster movie that he had to do to get a Real Pain made, I'd understand, but no studio would make this movie. So it's like, why did he do it?
Yeah. No, it sounds absolutely terrible.
It's awful. So what's your number 3 pick?
Speaking of people who have more money than they know what to do with, let's talk about Francis Ford Coppola and Megalopolis.
Okay, well, now this is where we're going to have a little friction.
Oh my gosh. What on earth was this? I had no idea what the heck he was trying to say, what was going on. The scenes had very little like continuity in between each scene. It was just like, I mean, you could tell that he thought everything that he was saying was very profound, but at one minute it seemed to be like a statement against fascism and Trumpism, and then another moment it seemed to almost be like promoting an authoritarian state and the philosopher kings and kind of a thing, and that these foolish commoners, and it was bizarre, but it wasn't like fun bad. It was just like, I don't know, to me it was actually pretty boring and just, it was just a mess in my opinion.
So I like this movie. It's not perfect, and it's not going to appear in my top 10 best films of the year list either, for the record. And I don't completely disagree. There's a lot going on, but I think, and I've actually seen it twice, and it is one of those movies that on the second viewing it was better. It's like it's one of those films where it's like, okay, you have to kind of take it in the first time, and the second time you can get a little bit more. But I did like how it was showing the different points of view. It was showing how messy life can be, and how difficult it really is to live with one another when people have extreme points of view. I think there actually was stuff being said, but that being said, I'm not gonna like necessarily chide you for putting it on the worst films of the year list, because it is ambitious in a way that like not everyone's gonna get, and not everyone's gonna like it. I mean, I also think like even if I didn't like it, I don't know if I would put this on the worst film, because it's like, you know what? This guy did save the money for a long, long time. He made it the way he wanted to. It's his money, and I kind of feel like you can spend your money however you want. I don't believe he should have kept it locked away if he didn't want to. So it's like, you know, if this meant that much to you, regardless what I think about it, you got it made. Good for you. Not everyone's gonna like it.
I just think some projects should just be kept within the family. Like small, like this thing was just, I just thought it was a convoluted mess. It didn't even look that good. And it had some really shoddy visual effects.
I disagree with that. I actually thought like many of the shots were actually quite beautiful in this. But again, it's not one of the best films of the year either. And I wrote my review, which was a very unconventional review. I really did have to point out, like, this is not, no matter what you think you're getting yourself into, you're not going to get it. Hi, honey. My wife is watching us live. Isn't that? But
Hi.
I'm not going to push back too hard, because
I thought it was terrible. My screening started like relatively full. There were probably 10 or so people, and I was the only one by the end left. My
reaction was my audience was different. Although I live near LA, so I know that I live in an area where people stand up and salute the Nicole Kidman AMC ad. So it's definitely a movie culture over here. I think one person left, and it was an older person. Everyone else stayed, and a couple people even clapped at the end of the movie. So
each their own, as they say.
To each their own. Now for my number 2 pick, and this is what I was leading up to the whole time, Kraven the Hunter.
Yeah.
And you know,
I didn't end up seeing this. I just had already. I was already happy with my worst of list, and I was just like, no.
Yeah, and you know what? Why at this point, like, you know, there's like some CEO who's outgoing at Sony right now, and he made the comment that the critics just didn't like these movies, and where the reasons they bombed. No, they bombed because they were bad. It's because you wasted people's time. And no one should vote for Kraven the Hunter, because look, they got burned on Morbius, which wasn't this year. Otherwise, there would have been 4 movies on this list. They got burned on Madam Web. They got burned on Venom: The Last Dance. And of course, they knew they were going to get burned on Kraven the Hunter. How did Sony make three Spider-Man movies, and all of them were this bad? And this one actually had the most talent behind it. J.C. Chandor is a great director. He directed All Is Lost and Margin Call. They ruined his career for no reason. Like, this pisses me off. And then the fact that Sony had the nerve to basically say, those are good movies. The critics just didn't like us. You know, as someone who's been writing movies for a long time, we don't have the influence that CEOs like to pretend we do. We just don't. Everyone's a critic these days, but they put garbage after garbage after garbage out. They did this 3 times this year, and they had the gall to get mad at us. Dude, you took 6 hours of my life. I could have been watching paint dry. I could have been doing something interesting with those 6 hours. Instead, I'm watching Kraven the Hunter.
Yeah,
like,
it's It's terrible. It's so cynical, and you're not going to convince me that that guy really thought that these were like great movies. And come on.
No, that's someone who speaks like someone who truly hasn't watched the movies. You know what CEOs like that should do? When MoviePass was making their own movies, and Mitch Lowe was the CEO, and he was promoting Gotti, which is one of the worst. That was the worst movie of the year that year. I picked.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Some interviewer asked him, "Did you enjoy Gotti?" And CEOs can take a response from this. Can take a note from this response, because this was like a very political thing to say. He looked at the guy and he said, "I never once looked at my watch." It's like, at least be clever like that. Don't say that they're bad. We know that you can't say that, but don't pretend they're good either. Give the response where it's like, read between the lines, but don't lie to people like that. Oh, okay. What's your second worst film of the year?
My second one we talked about already is Borderlands, and this was the worst theatrical that I saw all year. This is a movie with no plot. Like, really, the Kate Blanchett character in the
so you admit that Megalopolis has a plot.
It has a plot. Yes, it has like 15 plots.
Okay. I'm happy that I got you to concede that much, but let's talk about
Borderlands. Has no plot. And Kate Blanchett's character, she gets the assignment to like find this guy's daughter. She's like a bounty hunter at the beginning. And literally the next scene, she finds her. Like, you think that's going to be the story, like, going forward. And she finds her right away. And then, like, the whole rest of the movie is just them, like, ambling about the desert. Like, what? Like, it was so bizarre to me. And it really did feel like they went to set every day and was just like, well, we have to film something, so let's do it. Like, what?
Yeah, no, it seems like, it really just seemed
and
like,
it seemed like Jamie Lee Curtis was there against her will. Like, she was
it seemed like most of them were there against their will.
Especially her. It was like, what is this performance? Even
Kevin Hart is sitting there like thinking like, man, I am too good to be in this movie.
Oh man.
like that. Yeah, no, Borderlands is bad. The less said about it, the better. So, all right, I'm gonna do like a quick recap of my worst films of the year. At number 10, it was Venom: The Last Dance. Number 9, Harold and the Purple Crayon. Number 8, Amelia Perez. I really wish I could have put this higher on the list, but I just couldn't in good conscience. Argyle, Borderlands, Madam Web, Kinds of Kindness, Sasquatch Sunset, Kraven the Hunter, and the worst film of the year for me is Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. Now, I think we talked about this last year. I picked Rebel Moon Part 1, and I actually contemplated not even watching the second one. Like,
I didn't watch it.
I was so offended by the whole release strategy. And I'm going to also be frank, folks. I stopped this one after 35 minutes. Maybe you're going to say that is not enough time to truly deem if this is the worst film of the year. But guys, the writing was on the wall. This was just as bad, if not worse, than the first one. And this whole release strategy pisses me off. The fact that they did this again, where it's like they purposefully gave viewers the worst product first, and they had the better version coming at a later date. I don't know what kind of psychopathic company does this. We talked about why this strategy made sense in the era of DVDs. It's like, okay, look, in theaters, you want that PG-13 rating, you want to maximize your profits, and on DVD, you can have the R-rated cut that is probably the better version because that's where it's safe to put it. But this release strategy makes no sense on Netflix, and they just are not respecting anyone's time. They're not respecting anyone's resources. I don't say this very often, but you look at it and it's like, why are you spending money on things like this instead of like feeding poor kids or buying people houses? Why is this really what you want the legacy you want to do with your money. And
Yeah,
I'm
true.
sorry, Zack Snyder apologists, like, but maybe he's not a good director.
But it's amazing how that the nerddom community, I mean, almost all turned. I've never seen such a switch in just such a short period of time that really, I mean, almost everybody I know turned against Zack Snyder.
So what I think happened with that is they had what alcoholics refer to as a moment of clarity.
Yeah, I think so.
where they're like, while watching that movie, they're like, boy, he's so good. I enjoyed No, I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed Legends of the Guardian. No, I enjoyed Sucker. No, it's like, have I enjoyed anything other than 300?
Yeah, you're right. That's
so
true.
That's what I think happened. Is that they had a moment of clarity.
Welcome to the club. We're glad to have you with us.
Yeah, well, welcome to the club. By the way, the reason critics didn't fall for this facade is because we see too many good movies a year to be fooled by a bad one.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I don't know if you want to recap your list or just jump straight to number one.
My list, I have Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire at 10. I have Back to Black at 9. Madam Web at 8. Harold and the Purple Crown at 7. Kinds of Kindness at 6. The Carpenter at 5. Dear Santa at 4. Megalopolis at 3. Borderlands at 2. And my number one worst movie of 2024 was Megamind: The Doom Syndicate. As the worst movie. I really love the original Megamind. I've always felt like it was very underrated, and it had so much potential for sequels, and it just kind of I feel like it got kind of lost in the success of Despicable Me. That was the villain. The villain becomes the hero, whatever, movie that took off, obviously, and not Megamind. And so I've always really loved that original, and to just see what they would do. And it was so frustrating because DreamWorks has been so amazing with their sequels. That they almost all their sequels have been better than the original films.
Except Shrek the Third.
What's that?
Except Shrek the Third. That's one.
Well, yeah, but Shrek 2.
Yeah, Shrek 2 is better than Shrek 1.
That's what I'm saying. And so for them to just produce something so lazy, not even have the original voice cast, the script was terrible, the story was terrible, the animation was terrible, and it's just like, you have ruined Megamind. They were supposedly going to do a whole TV show and whatever. There's no more. It's gone. They ruined it. And
I think they did do the TV show,
and
though.
it just makes me sad that they
made the TV show called Megamind Rules.
Fine, they did the TV show, but I'm saying that the any excitement and love of this brand was killed. I mean, with this horrible movie, and it really ticked me off, and that they would do what they did, and it was my worst movie of 2024.
So the reason this isn't on my list is like a few reasons. It wasn't in theaters. It was a television pilot for a TV show. So it's like, and of course they didn't charge anything. So it's like, I feel like it was like such a nothing burger that it's not even worth picking on. But I am going to share one story because I know an animator on X who's worked on DreamWorks projects. And this person commented, why does everyone have to be so hard on the Megamind sequel? Can't they just be happy that Megamind fans are getting more Megamind to begin with? And I didn't respond personally because, you don't want to be a jerk in person. But publicly, I would say, no, we don't have to be happy for Megamind fans because I think Megamind fans do deserve better than this. I mean, I do not believe in the philosophy that we should accept crap just because it has the right name on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like, look, if no one liked the Megamind movie, that's the studio's fault for giving a bad product. And you should not expect the critics or even the fans to go easy on just because, oh, we finally got more Megamind. Like, would you just prefer that they not give us any more at all? And it's like, if it was going to look like this, then probably I would have preferred nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it just it really ruined any chance for like it for any. I think it cut off any like enthusiasm. I mean, they would have to make something like so amazing, I think, to kind of
Right.
it's
And
just it's over. Like
yeah,
Megamind is over, and it just bums me out because I really loved the first one, and this thing was garbage.
yeah, yeah, and Megamind, even though it's not a perfect movie, I think I give it 3.5 stars. But I mean, it's clever, more clever than most. It's one of the only movies where the third act deception reveal actually makes perfect sense, because of course she's going to be mad that Megamind was deceiving her the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I liked Megamind quite a bit, especially when I watch it in 3D and like all the stuff is popping out.
Yeah, I
That's a lot.
really enjoyed it.
That's a lot of fun.
We did a
But
whole episode of our talking animation, me and Stanford, on Megamind a couple of years ago, and I've always just felt like it was underappreciated.
yeah, I would say underappreciated. I do like the term underappreciated. I don't like the term overrated, but underappreciated, it's like that's probably an appropriate thing. So yeah, and
I
yeah,
like
and look,
both if it fits, but yeah,
yeah,
there we go.
and you know what, Megamind fans, like, look, I'm so sorry that this was the big return. I know some of you love this character so much that it's like you'll take anything you'll get, but honestly, you deserved better than this.
Yes.
So, all right, and that is sweeping out the trash. And in a week or two, let's do the best and let's be happy again. So, folks, if you are listening to this podcast and you enjoy it, subscribe to either the channel on iCritic or where this podcast is on Spotify, Apple, Deezer, all those platforms. Rachel, you're on Rachel Reviews on YouTube.
Yeah, and we've got a ton of end of the year content. I've got best and worst videos. I've got podcasts talking with my friend Conrado about the year. I have a female film critics panel with Molly and Mondo where we gave our movie awards. We've got that. I'm going to have a most anticipated coming up. There's just a lot of end of the year over at Hallmarkies podcast. We've got a lot of end of the year Hallmark, rom-com, Christmas. So if you're interested in that, we've got that over there. So there's just a ton of end of the year content coming from me. So check it out.
Sounds excellent. Looking forward to it. And folks, we would like to know what you think of any of these choices. Do you disagree with some of them? Do you agree with some of them? Don't agree that Megalopolis is the worst film of the year just to get my goat on, although if you honestly feel that way, and I understand some people do,
in the
that,
comments.
go ahead. But we would like to know in the comments one way or the other what you think about these. And did you think there were some movies that we missed? We'd like to know, so comment below. And it's a new year, and we'll see you at the movies.